I get really excited when I think about the teens going over to play with these different kids in our community that have special needs, because I know a lot of these kids don't get asked to have playdates. To have someone that's dedicated just to play with you, I think it makes them feel special. My name is Michelle Intravaia, and I am the creator of Playdates and Pals. So I've been blessed with a son, Dylan, and he has Down syndrome. Just from being a caregiver, taking care of a child with special needs, there's a lot that goes with it. One of the things that I had challenges with is playing. When I'm doing things around the house, laundry, or having just to do the daily tasks, I always thought to myself, it'd be great if someone can come over and just hang with Dylan. If someone's not playing with him, he's either watching TV or not doing something that is beneficial for him. I had this idea, it would just be great if someone could come over and hang with him. So Playdates and Pals is a program where I'm connecting teens with families in the community that have children with special needs. So the teens can go over their homes and have a play date, and they'll play for like an hour or an hour and a half at least twice a month. While they're doing that, I'm checking in with them, seeing how it's going. Do they need any support? I'm checking with the families as well to see, like, how did it go? Is there anything that you need? My goal for this program is to connect teens with kids with special needs in the community to create relationships where they will build connections and they will benefit from knowing and learning from one another. I know a lot of people in the community that have children with special needs. I talked to some families that I thought may be interested and asked them if they'd want to be part of this program, providing feedback of what works and what doesn't work in this program, so we can kind of create a template to give this program to other people if they want to try to do this. And then also same with the teens. They're helping me to develop it as we do it. What more trainings do they need? What is helpful, what works and what doesn't. I started by finding teens that I thought would be interested in. I have two nieces that are in high school, so I just really talked to them about it, and they've been incredible with all the ideas that they have.
I found out about Playdates and Pals through my aunt. The whole program was her idea. A great part about the Playdates is you get to meet a lot of new kids and learn more. It's a great learning experience.
My aunt was talking about her idea. I thought it was very interesting, but this sounded like a big idea. But seeing it actually come to life has been truly just inspiring, that this could actually become a reality.
It's so tricky having a child with special needs. Like, you want help, but you don't know how to ask for it. And things are challenging and do feel isolating. This program kind of bridges that a little bit. It creates a structure in which you're welcoming someone else in your home and in your life to kind of get a view of what it's like to have a child with special needs. So I think for families, it just makes you feel like you belong and you're getting supported.
I have two children with special needs. I have Reagan, who's 4 years old with Down syndrome, and I have Jimmy, who is 3 years old with autism. I heard about Playdates and Pals through Michelle. She actually approached me with this idea. I wanted to sign up to this program because it's great. I mean, I am totally underwater all the time as a parent with 3 kids. Any parent of 3 kids is underwater all the time. But when you add in the challenges that come along with an autism diagnosis or a Down syndrome diagnosis, it's really easy as a parent that's overwhelmed in any capacity to want to stay at home and not do anything and not do things. And then when you put on top of that the fact that you have kids who aren't flexible and have trouble with new people, there's a lot of things that prohibit us from leading a quote-unquote normal life that you would with kids. So this program gets you in front of a lot of people who probably don't have experience with that, or if they do, they have a very siloed experience of it. They're not living it every day. So they're able to see what it's like, interact with these kids, probably accept these kids a little bit more. It becomes cyclical. If you understand what these kids need, you can share that with other people. You're familiar with that. It's not scary. It's different, but that's all it is.
I did not know this family before we started the program. Meeting them has been truly life-changing. The family is so kind and so welcoming. There's 3 children, so Reagan, Jimmy, and they have a little baby too. Meeting them, I've just learned so much from the way that people with special needs just live and that they are different, but embracing that difference is just so important.
My kids don't have the same interpersonal connections with students their own age or adults or people that you would see a typical 4-year-old and 3-year-old have. They have their own way of doing it, and it's beautiful and it's different and it's unique, like my kids in general. Medfield does a beautiful job of integrating kids with special needs into programs, but my kids really crave that interpersonal connection, and I think sometimes they struggle with the social awareness to be able to do that on their own. And I want them to realize that my kids have value and they're wonderful and they're smart in their own regard, and they bring a lot to a community that people don't always see. And so a program like this, where we're getting kids in front of other kids, helps that.
What we do before we match the teens, we talk with the family to find out what the children like to play and what some ideas are about what they can do when they come over, and kind of work on that beforehand so they have some ideas of what they can do.
The thing with having kids who are younger with special needs is that I am their voice. So that feedback loop with Michelle is important. Like, if things aren't working, I need to be able to voice that for them. And Michelle, she's a background in this. She was an educator. She understands the needs from a mom standpoint and from a teacher standpoint and from an educator standpoint. She provides a lot of advice for me because she's done all this stuff before.
I meet with the teens through Zoom, and I kind of go through what the expectations of the program are.
Because a big part of Playdates and Pals is communication. So first we have like a set up Zoom call with the family where we meet them first and set up our schedule with the families.
We also have in-person meetings where we learn about a certain disability and how those people live their lives.
We've talked about Down syndrome, autism, invisible disabilities. We talk about what they know about disabilities and what their views are about that. Talking about how do we switch the paradigm, shifting it from like helping to how can we create a culture of support and learning.
It's so important to get this training to expose ourselves before we enter the playdate, so we're aware of what we might come across and if it's normal and how to deal with it if we see it.
I think jumping into a playdate, it's nice to feel prepared. It's good to have some tools you can use and some knowledge when you're going into it.
I also think it's important for the folks that are going to be volunteering to be able to explain what they're doing to other people. If you were to ask one of these teenagers, what is autism? They should be able to answer that question. And so that's going to take a combination of training and also just some observation.
They're having this education before and during their playdates just to get a sense for having them be more comfortable and just knowing about what different things may happen during the playdate. I think teaching more about that helps you to be less judgmental and more compassionate.
Hopefully it will buck some of those stereotypes that people have about Down syndrome and autism. People with Down syndrome aren't always happy. People with autism aren't devoid of emotion. Having the baseline understanding of what they're walking into and then being able to observe what a person with special needs is like, that combination is pretty important.
I think a huge benefit of this program for the volunteers is being able to have connections with kids with special needs in their own setting so they can kind of see what their world is like.
You learn how day-to-day life can be so different for other people. You also learn some of like the unfairness. You talk to families and you hear their stories and how maybe kids with special needs, they might get treated differently or how the accommodations aren't working for them.
They do learn differently and there are many things that they do differently, but embracing that difference is just so important. I've benefited so much from this program, just learning the way that people live.
I have a very unique experience because I'm able to see how people react to somebody with a disability that's visible and with a disability that's invisible. My daughter looks like she has Down syndrome. Jimmy looks like any neurotypical child. What I've noticed through that is kind of twofold. The expectations for Reagan are lowered immediately because they know that she has Down syndrome. And the expectations for Jimmy are that of a typical child, and when he doesn't meet those expectations, it's kind of met with surprise. And you kind of have to explain a situation that I don't feel like I should have to explain. You have to accept them from who they are, and I think that's a beautiful thing, to be able to be freed from all of that burden of what your kids should be doing and just allow them to be who they are. It's been the best thing that's ever happened to us.
So Reagan and Jimmy are my Playdate pals, and they are so funny. They're really cute.
They're both so different from each other, which I think is so great. It's just such a different feel when Rose and I switch off with playing with them.
Honestly, the teens are kind of following the lead of the children. The child is kind of guiding the teens on how to play and what to play with. But it could be drawing, it could be using Legos, playing with dolls, playing tag, playing hide and seek, whatever it is that they want to play with.
Reagan is very sweet. She likes to sing, and that's awesome because so do I. And Jimmy, he's really fun to play with. He is getting used to incorporating other people into his play, and he's started getting really good at it. But I love being around them. They're so fun and happy. It's awesome.
We can come in and there can be some moments where things are very tense. There can be crying and stuff, but that's expected. It can be different, especially people who are neurodivergent and living with special needs. It's a thing that happens. So all kids, they all have their moments, we all have our tantrums, and just learning how to deal with it is very important.
I think there are things that my kids struggle with, specifically Jimmy, that this program really helps with. This program kind of forces Jimmy in a really positive way to interact with people he doesn't know. He's out of his comfort zone. He has to learn how to cope with that type of uncomfortability, and he gets a lot of positive reinforcement in the process. For Reagan, this gives her an opportunity to just perform and just be able to sing with a high schooler that she thinks is really cool. That's a really important thing for her too, to get that constant positive feedback that a tired mom of 3 kids 4 and under can't always give.
I actually got a fellowship from UMass, where you have to create a program for your community to help people in the area that have special needs. And so through that program, I've had to take a class on Fridays. Through that class, I've learned so much about the disability rights movement. And I'm actually a special education teacher, and there was so much I didn't know. When the civil rights movement was going on, in the 1950s and in the 1960s, the one group that was not part of that was people with disabilities. 1 in 4 people in the world have disabilities. But if you go out in our community, you don't necessarily see that. People with disabilities and with special needs have their own dreams. And their own dreams not only to be part of the mainstream community. And there was this one woman, Judy Heumann, who I've learned a lot about, who's considered the mother of disabilities rights movement. She had polio and was in a wheelchair for most of her life. She got with a lot of different people with disabilities, and they came up with what they were looking for. In 1977, there was a sit-in in the San Francisco Federal Building, and the sit-in consisted of like 150 people with disabilities. And for 26 days, they stayed in this building until the 504 law was put into place. 504 is basically a law that says you can't discriminate with someone who has special needs if you're getting federal money. They were really courageous and brave. These people had these special needs and were staying in this building, and they were supported by other communities like the Black Panthers and veterans. The different modalities we have today have a lot to do with what the people did at that time. But I think we're always having to think about who is the community that we're serving, who is part of that community, and what can we do to best serve them. Also, normalizing people with disabilities in the community, seeing people in the community with disabilities more so people are more comfortable with it. My worldview has changed tremendously since I've had Dylan. I really value people as they are, and I see the beauty in differences rather than everyone trying to be the same. And I see children that have different disabilities, children from different backgrounds, and what they add rather than how challenging it is. I want to share him with the world because he's such a joy. I want people to know him.
Michelle.
I'm Michelle. What is your name?
Intravaia.
Yep. Dylan Intravaia.
I remember when he was born, and it was just life-changing for my family. He is just the kindest soul ever. He's so caring.
A lot of my friends knew that I was passionate about this, and they've all heard about my cousin Dylan, who has Down syndrome. I always talk about him and how amazing he is and how he's really like changed my life. And they're like, well, I want to meet him. So I was like, you can meet Dylan and you can meet more kids that are gonna change your life like Dylan changed mine if you do Playdates and Pals. I've always had a passion for like advocating for others, and I think education is a big part of advocacy, because if we can educate more teens on different disabilities and how to treat someone with special needs, then it's like a way of advocating for them.
These teens are accepting of my children. They know what they're walking into. They enjoy playing with them. They're volunteering their time to do this. And I don't need to apologize or explain away what's happening on a day-to-day basis. It's not an easy thing to do. I don't think that every teenager can walk into a house that chaotic, judgment-free.
One thing I learned from Judy Heumann is she said two things when I was reading her book that really resonated with me. The two things that she said was knowledge and exposure. And she said for people to really understand ideas and to buy in, they need to learn, so knowledge, and they need to have exposure. What this program does is taking these teens, they're having real life exposure to kids with special needs, and they're learning at the same time. So it impacts their worldview. It impacts how they see the world. They themselves will help others to see that for other people, and they can advocate for people that may have challenges advocating for themselves or need more support.
I like to think that we live in a world where we have so much access to information and exposure to different things through TikTok and Instagram and Facebook, but living it is very different than just observing it through a phone. And so I think having exposure and understanding the beauty and difference is important, because without experiencing it, you can say all of these things. You can say, I would accept somebody and I would know what to do. But when you're in that moment, you don't know how you're going to act. So it gives people an opportunity to put themselves in a position of being uncomfortable and really getting to know things that are different to what they're used to and things that they don't have exposure to. Just amazing to see the change in the way that kids think about things from when I was a teenager. I just am so impressed with these girls. It's unbelievable.
I think the benefits for the participants of the program is that they have a dedicated playmate. And I know for my son, he's really good with people one-on-one, and he really enjoys that one-on-one time, like going on the swing or playing a game or showing something. And he really enjoys that.
Oh yeah, food and sounds and those and working.
You like to do the fort,
Yeah.
sing songs?
Yes.
And then do you also play Zingo?
Yes.
And do you play with the magnetiles?
Yeah.
So you like to play games? Fun. He's sharing himself, and he gets to do that with a person, and they get to be with him and interact with him. And he enjoys that one-on-one time.
I really like it with Dylan because he's also very kind and very silly, and he laughs a lot, and that makes me laugh a lot, and I like when he laughs.
I like how teenagers are going to kids' houses and then they're just like playing with them, but like they're also learning about them and learning how they're like also great kids too. Just because they have a disability doesn't mean they're not good kids, doesn't mean they're at a disadvantage. It just means they need more help. That's all it means.
They get to know that they have teens on their side, like they have people that are trying to learn. I feel like it's a really rewarding experience. Not like I feel like I'm doing a favor for these kids. I'm learning a lot from them, and that feels good. And I feel like they like doing it too, so it's very rewarding.
So right now I'm talking to schools and I'm talking to churches to see if this would be a program that they'd want to take on themselves. And I would help guide, and I would help do some training, and whatever they would need I would help with. But I would love for other places to adopt this and use this model. And then I'd love other towns to copy it, and cities, because I'm just piloting this program and kind of creating it. I would love to see it in every community.
And I've been telling my friends about it, telling them that I think we're going to try to make this a reality as well in my town, Milton, and other towns too. And I think that it's important that people find out about this so they can, well, first spread the word about it as well and really just benefit from this program. It's such a wonderful idea, and there's nothing really like this.
Neurodivergency isn't exclusive to a diagnosis of autism or Down syndrome. And so I would really like to see children who are neurodiverse be accepted. Kids in general ed who are neurodivergent should have access to this, regardless of whether or not they're diagnosed with something like autism or diagnosed with something like ADHD. I would like my children to live in a world in which it does not matter that they have a disability and people can see past that, and I don't have to excuse away certain behaviors. I would love to see this exposure lead to people understanding that even though the diagnosis isn't necessarily visible, or even if it is, people are different and we need to accept them for who they are and not jump to judgment. And if a kid isn't acting the way you think they should be behaving, don't pull away. Figure out why, ask questions, approach a situation. It's not something to be embarrassed about on the part of the parent. I'm happy to have a conversation about it.
There's so many children in our communities that have special needs that other people don't know about. And I think you only see these kids during the school year, but they exist over the summer, they exist over vacations, and those can actually be the most challenging times because there's not a lot of programs in place for kids with special needs. I would love for churches and schools and even rec departments to be taking programs like these on to make it more visible and to make it more the norm and to make it more mainstream. Of course you're going to have kids with special needs. Why wouldn't you? That they're part of our world. These kids, they light up my day. It's like one of my favorite parts of the day is seeing these kids. And I want other people to have experiences with them. I want these kids to be visible, to be seen, to be valued, because they make such a difference in the world.
Are you a hobbyist, collector, artisan, or have a unique skill? If you are a Medfield community member and want to be featured on the show, contact us. For details, visit medfield.tv/medfieldmoment.